Did you know that a lot of people today prefer to communicate via text than via voice? Do you know that? They would much prefer to use instant messaging than waggling their tongues on a voice call. So much so that if I ring my children, they will usually not answer, but respond with a text message that says, "G'day, what's up?" And I can't complain because I set for them the very same example in dealing with my parents. But that's not the only place, is it? It happens a lot. Anyone else? Anyone else prefer to write text messages and instant message rather than voice calls? Yeah. We possibly could look at a generational divide there. It's what you're used to. Our communication has become a lot about written words, emails, text, social media DMs, posts on Insta, Facebook, Twitter, and all that sort of thing. And social media is a funny place when it comes to words and communication, isn't it? Let's just talk for a moment about words on social media. My other role in the Salvation Army is as a consultant with core and churches who want to do better in developing their online faith communities, their online churches. And I'm learning a lot. I don't have all the answers, but I absolutely love working it out with other people. But one of the pieces of research that was shared with me was conducted by the Business and Marketing School from the University of Technology in Sydney, and they partnered with a top advertising agency and in Australia to investigate just how much people lie online. Isn't this going to be fun, isn't it? It's going to be great, right? You know where this is going? To investigate just how much people embellish the truth, tell the little white lies, but also how much they out and out lie. So here is some of the info. So this report I've got comes from Campaign Brief, which is the advertising magazine for the advertisers. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a marketing professional magazine. And I'll put the full link in the YouTube description if you want to go find it. But here it is. Here's the first piece of data. Have we got that first picture up? Yeah, here we go. Men versus women. Women lie to make others feel good, according to the research. Men lie to make themselves look good. Isn't that interesting? But when it comes down to it, women are 64% more likely, or when it comes to who is more deceitful when posting, women 64%, men 36%. Does that jive with anybody? Anybody want an argument? Anyone going to have an argument with their spouse when they get home? Isn't that interesting? It's fascinating. And the report itself, you can go read it. It breaks things down even further. They look at posts that are just embellishments, as I said, or whether they're full lies, and they break down which one is more likely. They break it down as to which platform is more likely to result in deception, embellishment, or lies, and that is Instagram, and which one is more likely to be truthful, surprisingly enough, which is Twitter. Who would have thought? They also break down, this is really interesting, they also break down which city in Australia, they'd rank the cities as to which is the most likely to lie, or which is the most likely to embellish the truth a little. Do you want to know which is the most deceitful city in Australia? Canberra would have been my thought. But no, guess what? It's Adelaide. Who knew? Anyone got any friends in Adelaide? Might have to ask them why. And of course, the least likely place to find deception is from Melbourne. You happy about that? Anyway, you can go a deep dive and have a look into the report and then dive further in that into the actual research if you want. But it's interesting because some people think that if you have to stop and think about your words, if you had to stop and type them out with your thumbs or fingers or whatever, then you might be more inclined to be truthful. You might think that, but the general consensus is that written words and communication on the internet in general is no more or less truthful than words spoken in the world offline. in the real world. Not that the internet's not the real world, but you know what I'm saying. Here's a quote. International research has found that we are lied to up to 200 times a day, with deceitful behaviour beginning as young as 6 months old, when babies cry or laugh in order to get what they want. Now, the most disturbing thing about that quote is that it's published in a marketing magazine, because they're interested in this stuff. They want to know where the buttons are to push. So just be careful of all marketing you come across. But of course, that's not the only place in marketing that we see lies online. How's this for an example? Does this one work? Here we go. Hi babe, what are you doing? Oh, nothing much, I'm really tired, I'm going to sleep now, babe. And you? In the club, standing behind you. Caught out online. People lie online and in real life. And there's whole collections of screen grabs like that you can go and see that. So we turn to James 3. The tongue has a mind of its own. Why is it that people say things without thinking and they get themselves into trouble? Why is it? Well, James says you can tame the tiger, but you can't tame the tongue or the fingers. It's never been done. The tongue runs wild, a wanton killer. With our tongues we bless the Lord our Father, and the same tongues we curse the very men and women he made in his image. Curses and blessings out of the same mouth. Today we're going to take our times to remind ourselves of the importance of making sure that our words are untainted. And I'm not just talking about lying. Lying and lying online is easy to see. You know what I mean? Like, it's obvious. They have an algorithm that can measure the amount of deceitfulness, and they can put up, percentages and, tell us which city is the most deceitful and all that sort of stuff. It's easy to see lies online. It's not always easy to see some of the other things that we do with our words online. So I only use lying as an example. Our tongues do all sorts of other things that are tainted. So we need to be constantly on watch and be careful with our words, because this text tells us three things, and we're going to go through these three things this morning. First of all, it tells us that words are the basis of all our communication. That's what James tells us. Words cannot be unsaid, says James, and words can wound, says James. And we need to be careful of all those things. So let me just unpack what James is talking about in each of those areas, and then we will get into the why we do what we do. Words are the basis of all our communication. Words are the basic building blocks of communication. They make our relationships work, they make love, they make our work work, they make our reputations work. A life without words is impossible to imagine, impossible to comprehend, because they are foundational parts of our lives. In fact, philosophers and linguists who teach, there are philosophers and linguists who teach that we did not, as a human species, we did not develop language when we became civilized. They say no, we became civilized when we developed language. Isn't that interesting? We didn't become civilized and then develop language. Language was a cause of our civilization. They argued that the certain ways in which all minds work commonly with language indicates that language was a foundational building block of civilization. And without it, it wouldn't have happened. So, if language was a cause of civilization in the human species, or not, we don't know, it is definitely very foundational. Words are the basis of all of our communication and the basis of our civility, or lack thereof. So if we want to be more successful in our lives, if we want to be better in almost every area of our lives, it's words that we've got to think about, right? Now, what we understand here from James, though, and as a bit of an aside, is to say that communication is not always perfect, right? The tongue is an untamed tiger deal, right? It's not going to be perfect. We are going to get it wrong sometimes. We are going to be misunderstood. And we are going to be misinterpreted. I saw this very useful acronym in a text message, and I want everyone to remember this acronym. Here it is. IKYBYUWYTISBINSYRT You got that? It's a very useful acronym in these kinds of situations because it's the way to begin a conversation when you've gotten something wrong and you need to go to somebody and say, look, I think I've gotten this wrong. I need to apologize. Because what this acronym means is, I know you believe, you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. You see how the acronym breaks down the initial conversation and says, look, I think we got it wrong. So when words are misunderstood, misconstrued, or misused, misinterpreted, we need to use this acronym. I was once in a situation where someone said something that a couple of other people in the meeting seemed to react to in a very negative way. The words that this woman used weren't understood. They were trying to make a positive comment, but their words could have been easily, and unfortunately were, understood to be sarcastic and cutting. Have you ever been in a situation where someone said something that someone else has reacted to and they don't think they understood what they meant? Have you ever had that? You've seen that in a meeting a lot, right? A few days after this happened in this meeting, this person came to me and she apologized because she thought about what she said and suddenly realized that she knew they believed they understood what they think she said, but what they heard is not what she meant. And you know what? She could have left it. It had been a couple of days later. It wasn't a massive, massive deal. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't going to end up in Family Feud. But she knew that her words had an effect on her relationship with these people and the team. She gathered up her courage. She went and apologized for misunderstanding, clarified that her words were intended for good, and she was sorry. And she did what she could to make amends and rebuild that relationship. And I have to tell you, the value that that person put on this relationship and the team, as the leader of the team, I was impressed. It showed the value of the church. The humility was fantastic. And it was an encouragement to me and to others on the team to make sure we put in the effort when our words are not understood. Because words are the basis of every relationship. Every word we speak will have an effect. Very rarely will our words have no effect. And the effect will either be good or it will be bad. A word out of your mouth may seem of no account, but it can accomplish nearly anything or destroy it. Now, that may be words that are misunderstood, misconstrued. But words can also wound. And we can actually use words to wound. And I'm pretty sure all of us have done that at some time. Words we use can hurt someone, they can do damage, and if you don't immediately go and use some more words to put out the fire, they can take off like a bushfire. It only takes a spark, remember, to set off a forest fire. And I like how Eugene Peterson sends the whole world up in smoke, and you go up in smoke with it, smoke right from the pit of hell. That's pretty savage, isn't it? Pretty severe. That little phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is just pure crap. Words wound. Words wound in ways that is invisible and can take years to heal. And they can be transmitted, relayed. And I'm not just saying, you can forward a text or screenshot a Facebook post. Words get repeated over and over again from person to person, in group to group. We need to be very careful about the things that we forward on. Have you ever said to someone, so-and-so said this about me? Maybe when you were a kid, right? Perhaps as a kid you went and complained to your parents that your sibling had done something mean to you. Did you ever do that? My sisters did it all the time. So-and-so said this about me. Oh, Mum. You want to know something interesting? As a leader of a church, from time to time, and not here of course, I get people come to me and they say things very similar. So-and-so said this about me. They said this about my friend, or they said this about my family. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that rational, functional adult people would speak wounding words to someone or even about someone. When you come across this, when you encounter this, when you overhear this, there's a two-step process that I want to ask us to go through. Number one, challenge somebody. Perhaps ask them to consider the acronym. You might just need to say the acronym. I don't know if you can remember that. That's step one, challenge them to say, look, you know what you just said there is quite mean or that would be quite hurtful. Do you really think you should say that? Challenge someone. But then also, step number two is don't repeat it. Don't repeat it. If it continues and goes on and your challenge is not heard, then perhaps you come to us, leadership of the church, and then we can have a conversation with them about it or something. But the first instance, challenge them, push back. So that's mean. I don't think those words are appropriate. And then don't repeat it. Because words can wound. The second thing that James teaches is that words cannot be unsaid. Right? That's basic. You can't put toothpaste back in the tube. You can't unlight a bushfire. You can't use words like no offense, or oh, I take that back, or oh, just forget I said that. Those don't work. Once something is said, it takes more effort to put it out. And even when you do, there will still be some damage. That leader that I talked about before, she said something that offended someone else. She didn't mean it to be offensive, but it was, and she had to put in the effort days later for I would have said it would have taken her a few hours to have all the conversations she had to have after having a comment that went for a few seconds, right? So it takes a lot more effort because she knew she couldn't put the toothpaste back in the tube. She knew she had to put in lots of effort to make amends and reconcile, and so she did. Such a great thing. She knew the relationship she had with those people would never be identical, wouldn't be exactly the same, but it was finally in a place now where it could grow again. The fire was out. We need to remember from our text today that because words are foundational to our existence, because words so easily wound, and because they can't be unsaid, we need to be very careful about the way we use our tongues in every day, in every conversation. So, that's the evidence, that's the struggle, that's the problem. And James, funnily enough, says you will never tame the tongue. Thanks, James. That's encouraging. It's hopeful. Which is why I added a lot of what to do when it goes wrong parts in there. But his main point is not to say you need to fix your language. That's interesting, isn't it? His main point is not to say you need to use words better. You need to stop doing this. You need to stop doing that. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. That's not his point. His point is to say, look at your words and understand that they aren't always good. The tongue cannot be tamed. But, he says, the first thing to remember, that our fingers on the keyboard or our tongues in our mouths are not disconnected. They are connected. They are connected to our hearts and our heads, right? It's not our tongues, it's not our fingers, it's the heart and our heads that create these words, written or spoken. When we say things that are wounding, when we repeat words of hurt, then it shows that our hearts are impure, that our souls are unclean in some way, are tainted, tired, and broken a little bit. No question. That's what it shows. It is proof, says James. Apple trees don't bear strawberries, do they? Raspberry bushes don't bear apples, do they? You get what you have. Today is not actually or really about the tongue. It's not actually about the words even. Words are just the evidence. It's about the heart. The words you speak or type come from the heart. The heart may have been polluted with hurt. It may have become cracked or tired or tarnished with life, but it is from the heart. If you want to read, Jesus says the same thing in Matthew chapter 15. Out of the heart, a man speaks. So, what does James say? In the last part of the chapter, we read this. Mean-spirited ambition isn't wisdom. Boasting that you are wise isn't wisdom. Twisting the truth to make yourselves sound wise isn't wisdom. It's the furthest thing from wisdom. It's animal cunning, devilish plotting. Whenever you're trying to look better than others or get the better of others, things fall apart. Everyone ends up at others' throats. So every lie, every wounding word, every taint from the tongue, every flaw of the fingers comes down to this. Whenever you are trying to look better than others or get the better of others. Yeah? Or selfish ambition, vain conceit, and bitter envy, if you want to read some of the older translations. From these things comes every evil practice. Looking better than others. Says, I want what they have. I want the wealth, the attention, the reputation. Or getting the better of others. I want to be better than they are. I want people to look at me. I want people to get out of my way. Where does bitter envy and selfish ambition come from? It comes from the same place that all other evil practices come from. A deep-seated sense of shame, disconnection, and unworthiness. We don't have enough to be worthy within ourselves, so we have to step on other people, or we have to get from other people. We have to have more than what someone else has in order to feel worthy in some way. So from this sense of worthiness, from this sense of shame comes a desperate desire to have more, to do more, to somehow make ourselves worthy. And the desire to make ourselves worthy results in every evil practice, including lying and slander. Real wisdom, says James, God's wisdom begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. See, James writes that if we are to begin to do this well, we need to begin with a holy life. One that is characterized then by getting along with others. Holy life is where it begins. So then what is a holy life? How do you get a holy life? A holy life is one that is simply, honestly, and humbly acknowledges God has love for them. It's a life that is in Christ, which is a weird phrase, and I use it all the time because I like it, because what it means is that this is the life of a person who knows that they were in the mind of Jesus as he walked through this life on earth and death on a cross and resurrection to full life again. A life that knows that you were in the mind of Christ as he went through all of that. It is the life of a person who knows that God wanted them to be free so much that he was willing to die. Free from the requirement to have more, be more, get more, and do more. Rather, just to have more. As we live in that reality, as we live with a growing realization that God loves us and that we are absolutely, totally, and completely worthy before him, then the Holy Spirit comes and fills our lives and tempers our souls, gives us grace and wisdom and peace and joy. And that, from the heart of that, where the Spirit dwells, flows new relationships, growing life, growing community, growing family. It is gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings. Not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a whole healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoys the results only if you do the hard work of getting on with each other, treating each other with the same dignity and honor that Christ gave you. That's the truth. That's the why and the how to do it better. So we're going to have a time of prayer. And we're going to use some words. Who you say I am who you say I am, because that forms the foundation, doesn't it? If we know we are God's, if we know we are loved, if we know we are worthy, then we will be able to overflow that worthiness and honour onto others. So I wonder if you would stand with me. We're going to have a time of prayer, and I want to stop. First thing I want us to think about in our time of prayer is the words that we've used over the last week or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. To think through, have there been words that have been spoken in haste, spoken in anger, words that may have been designed to wound, words that we may have used to make ourselves look better than we are, words that we may have used to look worse than we are, filters that we may have put on our Instagram posts in order to make ourselves look better, feel better, do better. Have a think. Have I done that? I know I have. It's just evidence of the fact that I'm still growing. We are still growing in holiness, as we've talked about. We are still growing in that knowledge that we are worthy without the filters, without the words that we have to use to build ourselves up or build others or bring others down. We are worthy. God says so. I believe so. You are so. Would you stand with me as we pray? This place of prayer is open. If you would like to come and to kneel and to say, God, you know, I've used some words. I've used some words that show me that my heart's not quite as mature or holy as I would like, you know. Help me to learn and to realize this place of prayer is open. As we sing, you're welcome to come and pray.